Excellent. I'm ready to get started. All right. So, my task is to empower you with actionable steps to create healthy habits in 2024. And so I would love to do that in 15 minutes, and we'll see if I can accomplish that goal. At the end of this presentation, I'm going to talk about ways you can work with me if you are interested in learning more, in working with me, and I will give you an opportunity after all of that to ask questions as well. So let's get started. My goal tonight is really to empower you with actionable steps. So in creating healthy habits, I want to just give you some facts that are real. And I don't do this to scare us. I just really want to set the stage for what we are up against here in the United States. So these are statistics, and so these are factual. So when we look at the data, recent data shows that less than 7% of the US population is considered metabolically healthy. What does that mean? Many of us are on the road to disease or have disease. We are metabolically not as healthy as we can be. So less than 7% are metabolically healthy. And I'm going to define further in this presentation what that means. So this is alarming, right? These numbers are low. Let's look at the number of Americans that are considered obese, right? 42%. So looking at just those people who have extra weight, right? We want to make sure that we're doing all we can, especially, anything in our power that we can learn to adapt and make as a healthy habit in our lifestyle so we don't become one of these statistics. So 42% of Americans are obese, and we know that being obese can set you up for many chronic disease states, right? Being obese increases your risk for cancer. Being obese increases your risk for high blood pressure. Being obese increases your risk for diabetes, right? So we really want to watch this, and make sure we do something so we are not in that category. And if we are in that category, there's so much we can do to lower our risk and to get out of that category. Nearly 1/3 of the nation has prediabetes without even realizing it. So our standard American medical system, right, we are very good at catching disease, right, when we meet the criteria. And so oftentimes when we are borderline or getting towards diabetes, right, we may hear from certain practitioners that, okay, you don't have diabetes yet. So there's, just let's keep a watch on it and let's keep a watch on it. But there is so much you can do when you learn that you have pre-diabetes in order to prevent the disease from progressing. So we have 1/3 of the nation that doesn't even know that they have pre-diabetes. And really, the way to know is to get your labs done and look at your blood work. So I also want to take a step back and say why I'm so passionate about this. As a pharmacist and practicing in hospitals and clinics and having a mom who is morbidly obese, I see how much this extra weight that she carries around has led to her conditions of increased blood pressure. It's given her hyperlipidemia or increased lipids. It's given her rheumatoid arthritis, right? She didn't develop that early in her life. She developed that much later in her life. And that's from the onset of having an inflammatory diet. And now her cells are attacking her body, right? That's an autoimmune condition when your cells attack your body. So seeing how this has been such a debilitating factor for her and her health and getting in the way of living her epic life has really motivated me to take care of myself and then educate other women and how to take care of themselves so they can live with mobility, with freedom, without chronic disease. Okay, so some more facts. More than 70% of the packaged foods in the United States are classified as ultra-processed food. So the reason I bring this up is because one of the reasons obesity is increasing in our nation is because of our food. It's our food selection, and a lot of the foods that we are eating are highly processed, which means they look nothing like real food, right? They're full of chemicals. They're full of things that make us fat or make us not metabolically flexible. And so if we're constantly consuming these things, right, it's going to be really hard for our body to work optimally the way it was designed. So put 70% is considered ultra processed, and that represents about 60% of all calories consumed by Americans. And this is new data that came out in 2019. When we look at the overall population, 60% of American adults have a chronic illness, 40% of them with more than one chronic illness. So we are a nation that is getting sicker. We are a nation that's getting more overweight. And we are a nation that's starting to have a decrease in our longevity. So the bottom line, right? We're getting more chronic disease. A lot of us are unable to move and decreased mobility, decreased agility. We're becoming more overweight, and this is leading to disability, and it's happening at an alarming rate. And what I really want you to get from this is really to know that this is not a normal sign of aging. This did not happen 50 years ago, right? This is not normal. This is abnormal mainly because of our food supply. So this is being driven like by our modern diet, like I said, plus plus our lifestyle habits may be contributing to this, and we're going to talk about that tonight. And this really prevents our body from functioning at its optimal level. So the body naturally repairs itself. It likes to maintain an ideal body weight for itself, and it renews itself, it repairs itself. But all of these processes become blocked when we eat inflammatory foods and we don't have the right habits in place. So with that as a setup, now I want to give you some actionable tips. So we're going to talk about three main areas: health, habits, and mindset. And if you do these three areas really well, you are going to have really good health. It actually is the reason I changed my podcast name recently from Drink Less Lifestyle, because a lot of people want to drink less to feel better, right? And they're caring about their health. They're caring about their liver. They're caring about how alcohol is affecting their brain. And what I'm noticing is, okay, yes, drinking less is part of that, but we got to make sure you have healthy habits. We got to make sure you got a healthy mindset, and we got to make sure you're taking care of the other parameters of your health. So now my podcast is named Health, Habits, and Epic Living, because epic living comes from having that mindset where you are resilient. Okay, so breaking down health. All right, if you've got a pen and paper, ladies, here's the time to take notes, because I'm going to give you a lot of actionable things that you can be doing to improve your health this year. So first of all, let's define what metabolic health is, right? So there's 5 factors that look at if you're metabolically healthy or not. So those 5 factors, 2 of them are lipids. We look at your HDL, we look at your triglycerides. We can also do the triglyceride HDL ratio, because that will give us an indication of if you are at significant risk of cardiovascular disease. So I come from a mom and a dad who both have high lipid levels. I myself do not. So even though part of it may be genetic, we know that a lot of it has to do with your lifestyles and how you're living and how you're feeding yourself, your inputs, which we'll get to in a minute. So 2 of the factors revolve around lipids. Well, another factor is your blood pressure. Is that in normal range? We look at your waist circumference. For women, that should be 35 inches or less. And then we also assess your fasting blood glucose. These 5 parameters can tell us how metabolically healthy you are. And I just got off a call with one of my clients that I'm working with, and we were running through her labs to make sure that she is staying metabolically healthy. So what influences these parameters? Well, it's our inputs. And I like to think of inputs as things that we're putting into our body. So I think of this as really 3 categories, but I break out one category into 2. So anything that's going down the esophagus. So that's food and alcohol, right? What are our inputs? What is the quality of the food? How much alcohol are you drinking? Because we know alcohol is not good for the body. The body can't metabolize it as well, and it's considered toxic to our body. It's considered a mitochondrial toxin, meaning it gives us less energy. We get depressed, we get anxious, right? There are numerous negative effects that the body experiences from having too much alcohol. The quality of our food, I'll get into in a minute. We know another input that the body needs. Okay, it's not optional. The body needs exercise for great health. It needs it. It's not an optional thing. So we're going to get into a little bit of exercise. And then I don't think a lot of us think about other inputs like mental inputs. What are you consuming mentally? I know for a lot of people, they could get depressed easily reading too much of the news, too much information. They're on screens a lot. They're not giving their brains the break it needs. And all this input of information is leading to stress, is leading to make them feel overwhelmed, is leading more fear, creating more anxiety in their bodies. So really looking at that mental input, that cognitive load you're getting. All right, so breaking down the input of food, some action items to stay healthy in the new year. As women, particularly as you get older, over 40, even more so over 50, even more so over 60. Actually, there was just a paper that came out last week. I was just reading it, how we need more protein. We are losing our muscle mass. And if you want the stats around that, we lose about 8% of our skeletal or our lean muscle mass each decade after 40. So if we are not doing things to prevent that, we are going to lead into sarcopenia, which is a loss of muscle mass. You know, we might start hunching, our postures might suffer. We can't open a can or a jar as easily, right? Our physical ability to do things of normal daily living starts to decline. And so preserving our muscle mass is a must, particularly as you age, you need more protein, not less. So I always talk about when we're talking about improving our health, are you getting enough protein? Women need protein. We need at least 100 grams of protein. Now, I know that's a lot, and a lot of us aren't there yet. And so in my programs, I help you build up to getting 100 grams of protein a day. So when you prioritize protein, the great thing about that is you're focusing on what your body needs, and then you focus less on what the body doesn't need. So we want to limit our ultra processed foods. As I mentioned, they're high calorie, they're high chemically laden, they're super inflammatory for the body. They're not allowing us to restore and reset properly. They're throwing off our hormones, they're throwing off our cortisol. And so the downstream effects of an ultra high processed food diet is disastrous for our health. So we want to limit those items. We want to limit alcohol. We talked about how that is a mitochondrial toxin. Mitochondria are the energy powerhouses of our cells. And so they give us energy, they give us drive, they make us want to move our bodies and do things rather than just be lazy and stay on the couch, right? So when we consume too much alcohol, right, we get more depressed, we get more anxious. And well, a lot of people will tell me how unmotivated they are to pursue health goals. We want to limit sugary drinks. Similar reason. Sugar is also a mitochondrial toxin and can have addictive behaviors just like alcohol can on the brain because it works on that reward pathway. And we want to limit snacking. Snacking is for kids. Snacking is not for adults, right? We're sold misinformation about snacking, and we realize now that snacking is really not needed for adults. We really should be eating meals and limiting our snacks. Another thing, as we age, we need to increase our fiber. Americans are not getting enough fiber in their diet, and it's leading to a whole host of problems. When you get enough fiber, you feel full. You have generally normal bowel habits, and it delays the onset of sugary foods hitting the bloodstream. So many beneficial effects when you get enough fiber. And if you're looking at counting your fiber, this is something we do in the Tone in 10 program. I have the ladies follow the workbook, fill out the monitoring sheet so they are getting enough fiber in their diet. A lot of people are only around 15 grams of fiber a day, and we should be aiming for 30 to 50 grams of fiber a day. All right, so when it comes to health, what can we do? Well, we talked about sarcopenia, losing muscle mass, and that's particularly important for women as we age. And so when women go through menopause, we also hit a cliff on where we start to lose more muscle mass. So incredibly important as you go through perimenopause, menopause, and beyond, that we are adding in strength training to preserve that muscle mass. And you may even want to build muscle, right? So not just prevent muscle wasting or muscle loss, but actually build muscle. So you can lift your luggage, put it on overhead in the plane, open a jar of pickles, the things that we need muscle for. When you do strength training, it's not just about muscle. It's about your bones. Your muscle protects your bones. Strength training also is a form of exercise for the bones to build osteoblasts, which make more bone. So you're less risk for fractures, you're less risk for osteopenia and osteoporosis. When you build muscle, it gobbles up sugar in the blood. So it's a great way to lower our blood sugar. When you build muscle, you burn fat. So it's a great way to change your body composition and lose fat. When you strength train and build muscle, guess what? You also increase BDNF, which is brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which means you get more brain cells, better brain connectivity. It's easier to learn things. It's easier to reprogram your brain. You have that learning mentality. And it also increases your stability, right? So we want to make sure we're not falling or putting ourselves at risk of falling and leading to fracture risk. So increasing your stability by strength training. So many benefits. There's so many more I could go into, but those are the big ones. And so we want to make sure we're getting in at least 2 to 3 sessions of strength training per week. So that's an action item. All right, when it comes to health, we also have to focus on stress, particularly as we age as women. When we age, each decade after 40, again, we become less stress resilient. What does that mean? We are more prone to stress. Little things start setting us off. Little things that we can ignore in the past start to really bother us because of the hormonal changes we are going through. When we produce stress or have stress, that produces cortisol. So stress is equal to cortisol. So cortisol is our stress hormone. When we secrete cortisol, it increases our blood pressure, it increases our heart rate, it increases our blood sugar, it increases our insulin. Insulin is our fat storage hormone, so it's going to cause weight gain. And that's really going to be caused as visceral fat. So that weight gain is really the dangerous kind of fat, the visceral fat. And that's the fat that leads to cardiovascular disease. So we really want to make sure that we have stress management practices so we can reduce our cortisol and we can reduce all the downstream effects of the cortisol. This is one reason why women gain so much weight as they go through the transition of menopause. Estrogen is protective of our bone. Estrogen is also protective with stress. So is progesterone. And as those levels decline as we go through menopause, a lot of women will all of a sudden start to notice they have more belly fat. And they'll complain that, oh my gosh, I'm losing my hourglass figure, or I'm getting a little puffy around the middle. And that's because of these shifts in hormones. Not only that, we get an increase in cortisol as we go through menopause. And so this is all leading to that weight gain. All right, so those are some tips you can do for your health. Now moving on to habits. You can have some of the greatest habits, but really you sink to your worst habits, meaning you're only as good as your worst habits, right? I know a lot of women Monday through Thursday, they have it dialed in, but come the weekend, the drinking goes up, the eating goes off the rails, right? And it's like, why can't I make the progress I want to make on my weight loss goals or my other health goals? Because if you still have bad habits, those might be your anchors that you need to move so you can move forward. So habits are really important to look at. So I like to break habits into 2 categories. When I'm working with my clients, are we breaking bad habits or are we developing good habits? Because there's 2 different processes when you're looking at breaking habits versus building habits. So breaking bad habits, I have a course inside Epic U that talks about how to break a bad habit. And the big 4 factors that go into breaking bad habits is identifying the root cause. Why do you do it? right? What's causing you to overdrink? What's causing you to overeat? What's causing you to do this bad habit? We have to look at that because that's just the behavior, but we have to know what's causing that. So I walk them through a whole tutorial. There's a whole course with videos and a workbook that you can identify what is the root cause that's driving the bad habit. Maybe it's lonely, maybe it's boredom, right? Let's really look at what's driving the behavior. And then we drop into curiosity. We get really curious about why it formed, why we're doing it, and the benefits it provides us. And then we learn new skills so we can still meet our needs and have our needs met, but by a different behavior. So that's going to require developing new skills, as well as looking at letting go. Some people, it's just really hard to let go of the past. They're hanging on to things that don't serve them. So we want to make sure that people are not hanging on to something that really should be just let go. And so there's a whole process of letting go that I walk my clients through as well. So that's breaking bad habits. And I think it's a completely different process than building good habits, right? Good habits, you are what you repeat, right? You get what you repeat. That's from James Clear from the Atomic Habits book. Really great book. And he summarizes in his book, right? The 4 steps that he thinks are really good to build good habits. And so I like his CO approach to that, right? Making it satisfying, making it easy, making it attractive, and making it obvious. Of those 4, I think they're great, but I say if you can just boil it down to 2, that gets my clients the result they want. And the 2 I like to focus on, make it doable and make it fun. You want to do things that are doable, right? It's not too big. It doesn't feel overwhelming. And then you want to keep doing something if it's fun. So if you're building a new habit, we look for ways on how to make it doable and how to make it fun. And essentially, whether you're breaking a bad habit or you're instituting a new habit that you want to repeat, what you're really wanting to build into that habit is a new identity, because the habit won't become automatic. You'll have to think about it. You'll kind of have to work up to it each and every time if it doesn't become automatic. But it becomes automatic once that habit becomes part of your identity. And so we really work towards this identity piece, right? Because if you think of yourself as a non-overdrinker, you're just like, I don't overdrink anymore. You actually start behaving that way. So shifting your identity is everything. Okay, I noticed I didn't meet the 15 minutes, so, but we're getting near the end. All right, the third step is mindset. So we talked about health, right? There's certain criteria to do there to get optimal health. There's habits, things that you want to repeat and have automatic, or things you want to break. And then there's mindset. And life is as good as your mindset. I love this quote because there are people who have their health dialed in. They have their habits dialed in. But guess what? They're still miserable. They're still complainers. They're still complaining about things, right? And so they're not living epically. They're not feeling like life is amazing. And so mindset is a key component to really living the life you want. So we are all programmed to look at negativity, right? It's what kept the species alive. We had to know when there was danger. We had to know when to run, when to flee, when to stay, when to fight. We know that a lot of us have that negativity bent, right? So we might see, the grass isn't greener, right? We're just like, that was a hard day. That was a long day. We might notice things that we get negative about. That's not the problem. Actually, that's a protective mechanism for the species, and it helps us survive. What the problem is if you just focus on that and only that, because we know what you focus on begins to expand. So if you're negative here, it starts to translate to being negative over here and negative over there and negative over there. And then all of a sudden, your brain is just looking for negativity all the time. And a lot of times I'll hear women say, gosh, I just have this inner critic that just won't let up on me. I just have these negative thoughts about myself. I'm not good enough. I don't have enough time to exercise. I don't have enough time to meal prep. I don't have enough time to do the things I want to do. There's not enough hours in the day. I can't lose weight. I've been this weight for years. My weight just keeps going up and I can't seem to lose it, right? This is all that negativity bias. We're like, our mind gets stuck in these ruts if we don't help our mind out of it. And I want to share with you that words are very powerful. When you think, I can't, I'm not good enough, those words send off a different energy in your body, a lower level vibration in your energy where you actually stay stuck. The words you think matter because it either creates your stuckness or it creates your acceleration. We're moving on to the goals we want. And so we want to harness the power of your mind. And that's going to be with the thoughts that you think. And so I have a course inside of Epic You where I talk about believing in new things before you see the results, because we got to get your mindset right. If you give up in your mind, you wind up giving up in your body. And so we want to make sure that we keep going, we keep getting our goals, right? And we keep leaning in to what is most important to us. And that is huge when it comes to mindset, right? All right. So in conclusion, we talked about 3 areas that are key to epic living and having an epic life and epic health. So our health is one, right? We want to invest in that with our time and our energy and our resources because it is the number one thing that gets us everything in life, right? We can't build wealth. We can't go to work if we don't have our health. We can't take care of our kids. We can't take care of our parents, right? If we don't have our health. When we get sick, right, everything shuts down. So taking care of our health, I always want to invest in it. It's the greatest investment I can make in this life and prolonging my life and prolonging the health span of my life. So how are you investing in your health? Are you looking at your inputs? Are you looking at your food, your exercise? Are you looking at your habits, right? Are you looking at how you're managing stress? So speaking of habits, right? What do you want to repeat, right? Building those good habits. And then what do you want to let go of? Breaking those bad habits. 2 different processes that I talked about that you can start implementing right away to either build a new habit or break a habit that you've just outgrown. You're just done with being an overeater, or you're done being over a drinker, or you're done being an overworker, or you're done being somebody who's always overwhelmed. And then mindset. Managing your mind, right? Even when that negativity bias comes up, how to pull yourself out mentally, right? That's mental health. That is huge. And so learning those principles to pull out your mindset and have that growth mindset that you can learn new things, you can do things differently. And it's just a matter of practicing those skills. All right. So that is the conclusion of our mini class. I did it not quite in 15 minutes, but thank you for being with me.